Welcome, everyone. I am so excited about interviewing Dennis Tratine and Arlen Lawrence. And you are going to want to watch this if you're worried about the day your tween or teen leaves the nest, if you have a child that is unmotivated and they don't seem to care about their homework or their future. You're gonna wanna watch this if you wanna know what you can do to empower your tweens and your teens, which I know this comes up all the time. How do we motivate our kids? How do we get them to care about their future? How do we prepare them? So welcome, and I would love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves.
You want to start, Arlen?
Well, my name is Arlen Lawrence. I'm co-author of Wings Not Strings, Parenting for the Launch, and the What I Wish I Knew at 18 Leadership, Life Skills and Leadership curriculum. I am also a book editor and a publishing professional. That's what I do for a day job. And I am a wife and mom of 5 grown children and almost 8 grandchildren.
Wow. How exciting, 8. We'll have to talk another time how you keep up with all
That's
that.
a whole nother book. We haven't started those books yet. But yeah, a new season of parenting and grandparenting for sure. But successfully launched 5 grown kids. All 5 went to college, 4 are married. 1 just moved out and started her dream job. So yeah, that's me.
Well, congratulations. So you're putting everything that you share, you have put it into practice. So you're going to share that with us today.
And I can vouch for that as a dear friend of hers and knowing her kids as well as I do. So I'm Dennis Tratine, and I'm the president and CEO of LifeSmart Publishing. And we are all things kids and equipping kids to be prepared to soar in adulthood and preparing the parents to guide them along the way. And we have a little smaller family. We have 2 children, both grown. And as of last weekend, our daughter just got engaged. So this is a time of celebration for our family. We're not at the grandchildren stage yet, but it's just an exciting season in our lives to see our kids further along than the moms that are probably joining us today. And part of what we love to do is to bring hope because we're a bit on the other side of this launching, and we've been there, done that, and can really share that message of hope and all of this investment you're doing out there, moms. It will pay off.
Maybe that's our next book, Life After the Launch.
Yes. Well, and we need hope and we need encouragement and we need those things, those practical things that we can do. And I have to hold up your book, Wings and Not Strings. Of course, I have them all here. And I love the curriculum. It's so helpful. I love your Parenting for the Launch. And of course, I had interviewed you about that. And I love this one that I'm using with my moms because you have questions at the end of the chapters. It is so practical. It really raises self-awareness of like how, and you ask the question like, not that we're doing it wrong because there's no perfect parents, but it's what, where might we have an opportunity for growth? And you say that over and over again in the book. I just want to give a big shout out because this is a must read for all parents. And we're going to launch in a little bit and talk about some of these things. I want to read just a quote from the book. Few transitions bring as much joy, tears, and anxiety to parents as to when their children graduate from high school and head off into the real world. Questions race through our minds, which I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Have we taught them everything they need to know? Are they on the right track? Will they make good decisions? How will our relationship change? Are they ready? And I'm just like, yes, I'm an empty nester now. And my daughter is a sophomore in college, so I'm living this, and then you give the statistics, which are like really sobering. And can you share a little bit of the sobering statistics that we're seeing with our youth today?
You bet. Well, one of the things that we bring to the parenting table is perspectives on how young adults are doing. We always want to be a step ahead as we parent. And there is a lot to be excited about, but there's also a lot to be concerned about. one of the overwhelming statistics is that of the students who go to a four-year college, only 59% of those students graduate and get their degree in 6 years. That means over 40% of kids out there who have their dream of going to college, succeeding, and having that amazing job and so forth, 40% of them are having their dreams threatened in one way or another. And so from the standpoint of, are they college ready? Well, many are not. Another set of statistics that we get from employers is just how disenchanted they are with the preparation of the younger workforce. And what they're always saying to us is they're missing these attitudinal, soft skills, character skills that they're looking for. And we call them leadership skills, and they're lacking. Some other statistics that are going on have to do with the increasing incidence of mental health issues in schools. And one of the biggest challenges today in universities is keeping up with the demand for mental health services that students are seeking. And so whether it's from how are we prepared, both in terms of leadership skills, are we prepared in terms of our own mental health? Are we prepared with, the kind of skills that employers are looking for so you get that great job? There's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Wow. What do you think are some of the causes of this?
Yeah. Well, I'll just briefly touch on a few things. I think number one, our schools are failing our students, and I'm talking high schools and colleges, in preparing their students for the next step with practical leadership and life skills that they're going to require. So if we as parents go into this season of life assuming they're going to all learn it in school, they're not. So we have to be very cognizant of what they're learning about finance, about career readiness, and about a lot of the leadership skills. And that's one key factor. I think technology is a huge factor. Huge factor where so many students are spending way too much time on technology, and the statistics of anxiety, depression coincide with the introduction of smartphones. And so we really have to be concerned about that. I would say those are a couple of the main factors. Family dysfunction is another one. And then finally, which is the topic of today, is parenting. There are a lot of parenting strategies that we're employing that although well-intended, are not doing the job in really preparing these kids for life on their own.
Which brings us to the title of our book.
Yeah. And I really like how you break it down in the chapters. And one of the questions that I have is about the different parenting styles. I saw myself in all of them and how I've done that in different areas with my kids. And then you have how it impacts them. And I was like, oh yeah, been there, done that, doesn't work so well. So can you touch on a few of those? Because I'm sure that I'm not alone in that.
I'm just going to say, we all do it.
Yes.
We all do it. And it's just to the degree that we use those different strategies that affects our kids negatively. So the first one, I think there's been countless books written on this one too, is helicopter parenting. The helicopter parent is that parent that's always over your shoulder, that boss that's always micromanaging and making sure you did this or didn't do that. And if you didn't do it, they're going to do it for you. And, hovering like a helicopter, sending texts, constantly wanting to be in charge, or not even just constantly wanting to be in touch, excessively so, inappropriately so. So that would be helicopter parenting, the hyper-involved parent. And we talk about in our Parenting for the Launch book about this generation of parents is really the first generation of parents who not only were, dads fully in the delivery room where they weren't in generations past, but I mean, they are involved in everything. They're at every practice. They're at every party at school. They're doing everything full on, hyper involved. My parents were certainly never that involved in my life when I was growing up. Secondly would be the performance parenting, would be a parent vicariously living through a child and experiencing life through the child's achievements, the child's even appearance. The parent takes that to themselves, almost as if it was them themselves. It's a reflection on them themselves. So the child earns rewards with the parent for performing, for achieving, and also the parent themselves is performing using their child. So that's performance parenting. Control is another strategy. That a parenting strategy is just parenting out of fear. It's the kid who's armored up to go out on their bicycle, so much so that they can't even ride the bicycle. And that's a form of physical control, but then also emotional control, making sure our kids don't ever go anywhere or do anything or talk to anyone, to make sure that we make sure that they get to a certain objective.
And then the permissive parent,
permissive, which is total opposite of that.
Really becoming common.
Best friends. We're going to be best friends. We want our kids to be happy. We want them to be our friends. So, we do want our kids to be our friends. That's actually the goal, is that the end game is that we get to have a healthy adult relationship with our kids. But many parents are abdicating way too soon, wanting that buddy-buddy relationship before kids are ready for it. And so they let go, and there's no parameters whatsoever.
Yeah.
So those are probably the four main ones.
And you talk about how we can swing, from how we were parented, and then we end up swinging the opposite way. And I very much relate to with the fearful parenting. I see that a lot with moms today, because you hear every horrible story that comes down the pike, stranger danger and all those things. And so we're so scared. And then I think that the texting, I see that's a real issue, because when we were at school and we were feeling anxious, we couldn't text. We had to learn how to manage our anxiety. And now what happens is the kids are in the bathroom. I've got a test. I haven't studied. I don't know where to sit at lunch. And so then the mom's texting back out of anxiety, because she's taking on that anxiety. And I think that we had to figure it out. And now our kids, we're just constantly in contact with them. And I think that does cause a lot of anxiety for not only us as parents, but the kids too.
Well, they never learn their own coping mechanisms, if that's the case, because they get that in their mind, relief or help is always a text away, as opposed to, oh my gosh, how am I going to deal with this? What am I going to say? What am I going to do? Taking risks. All of that gets circumvented if all they're doing is constantly texting a parent to get bailed out of a situation.
And an interesting thing about self-awareness and parenting that we like to bring out in the book is the unintended consequences of some of these things. So imagine the kid who is being texted all the time. What does that say to them about the lack of belief and confidence that the parent is showing them? So we need to kind of put ourselves in our kids' position a little bit and say, you know what, how are they going to receive the way we communicate, the way we constantly hover? That hovering is the biggest cause of a lack of self-confidence and a lack of willingness to take risk and, and go out and live your dreams. And if you're being parented in a way where the kid feels like, well, my parents don't think I can do this on my own.
Yeah, it can be a very subtle message, can't it? And we don't realize we're sending that. And then the kid rebels too, I think, and is disrespectful because they know instinctively, like, I want you to believe in me. So they're always pushing back, and that causes so many power struggles too.
So you know what I think is really the really subtle part of it is a huge revelation for me, that control feels helpful. So you feel like you're being the best parent in the world. You feel like you are absolutely doing the right thing. So it really requires a large degree of self-awareness to kind of pull yourself up short and go, okay, this feels helpful, but ultimately is it? And then to really have the humility to say, oh my gosh, maybe it's not.
But Arlen, we know that if all our kids listened to what we told them, then everybody would be happier.
Well, isn't that true of you and me though? I mean, when I think of the mistakes that I made as a young person that I could have avoided if I'd listened to some of the adults in my life at that time, but I learned from those things.
Exactly, which brings us to the next point, where you have a whole chapter on being an empowering parent. And so please help us. Tell us, what does that look like?
Well, one of the things that we like to talk about is parenting today with tomorrow in mind, right? Because really what we're doing is we're setting the stage not only for our child to become a flourishing adult, but we're also setting our relationship up for that long-term adult-to-adult relationship. So the reason we called our book Wings Not Strings is we like to use visuals, because I think I'm a very visual person, and sometimes I need that crutch. But are we releasing an eagle to soar, to be able to navigate the winds of life and the turbulence to fulfill their dreams? Or are we releasing a kite, there's the strings, that we feel that we need to control? Or choose to control and manipulate. So it starts off with this concept. Well, really, we are releasing that eagle to soar, and through empowered parenting, we're going to be facilitating that. So one of the things that we talk about a lot is thinking of our kids as they get older, and certainly in the teen years, as a future adult. So we kind of have to get over this, they're not my little kid anymore. And we have to start really focusing on, am I training a future adult, and am I teaching and training for independence? And if we think about it that way, then some of those things that Arlen just shared are going to go away, because we're going to almost judge ourselves as how well have we prepared them for independent life in the real world, as opposed to how important is it that we're still needed and helpful and all of this. So the philosophy that we bring to the table is really one of that. It's teaching for independence. We're raising that future adult.
I love that, because I thought of it when I was taking notes in the book. I was thinking of it like that needs to be our North Star. Like to have that, you talk about having that vision. And so we need to be reminding ourselves as parents, we are raising an adult. Is this going to help them be more independent or dependent?
We have to be students of our children too. We have to know them to be able, just like you would get to know any other adult, you kind of check yourself before you ask your friend a sensitive question, or where you know you're kind of maybe intruding on a personal area. You would say, can I ask you a personal question? You wouldn't just barge into your friend's personal space. And we need to start giving our growing children that respect that we would other adults, to protect their personal space, their personal thoughts. Obviously it's different because they're a child, but become a student of your child. What's the best way to approach them? How do you have those sensitive conversations? Respect is huge.
And our style of communicating morphs into more coaching.
Yeah.
And I think we talk a lot about how do you move from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. And I think one of the ways we do that, as the maturity chasm starts to narrow and our kids are getting closer, to us in that regard, is we take on a coaching type of mindset. And that means sharing with versus talking to, and sharing the why certain things are important, as opposed to just, this is what you've got to do. Yeah. And I think that provides that respect that kids need and deserve, just like we want. And that mutual respect and coaching style are very powerful for the teen years.
And and helps them to connect the dots, because their brains aren't fully developed. So when you're sharing the why, it's helping them to connect cause and effect. Like, if you doing this is going to, this is why. And they can have a deeper understanding of why that's helpful.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes, and then linking the why to leadership skills that are a part of that. That when they demonstrate these things, this is why the why is so important. Right. It's preparing them to be a great leader. That's what's out there. Linking the why.
Can you think of an example?
I think in today's world where we see this the most is in career readiness. Mm-hmm. And a lot of young people don't have jobs, or certainly if they do have jobs, they're maybe sitting, they're mowing lawns or things like that. They're not working at employers. And so they have a real disconnect of thinking that, employers are there to serve them because they were hired, as opposed to, no, as an employee, you're hired to serve the company. And so being able to share what are the most important qualities that businesses are looking for when they hire employees, qualities like having high standards of excellence, having integrity, being dependable, having a great work ethic. Those are the things that are going to help set your kids apart, especially today. And so being able to say, boy, when you demonstrated this great work ethic, that is a leadership quality I admire. And you know what? Employers do too. Huge to our kids.
I want you to speak to a couple of things that you said. Trying to make, I guess, our kids happy. Like that is a big thing I see. Wanting our kids to be happy. And it's well-intentioned, right? But speak to that, because you talk about that in your book, and I see that a lot. We want our kids to be happy, and then we overdo. And what happens when we do that?
That's right. Well, so what that really comes under the permissive parenting. Very many times it comes under the permissive parenting, and we can't stand for them to not be happy. But what the problem with that is then they never learn to deal with the normal discontents of life, and they become very entitled. They think they always should be happy. And I think you and I, as grown, mature adults, know that we are not, the reality is we are not always going to be happy. And when we're not happy, we need to learn to deal with that. But we have an entire generation of young adults, many of who have been taught that they can always be happy. And to Dennis's point, they're getting into the workforce thinking that they need to be served in the workforce, and not having that understanding that, wait a minute, there's something I need to bring to the table here. And if we've never done the hard work of making them accountable to be able to contribute, as well as, to be contributors instead of just consumers, they're going to just grow up entitled. Wow.
And we're seeing that, we're
seeing this in a big way, whether it's on college campuses where the students feel like, they ought to run the roost basically. And we're seeing it in the workforce with employers. And so there are things that we do, again, best efforts, right? And maybe well-intentioned, but one of the things we like to call out in our Wings Not Strings book are, what are the downstream attitudinal character consequences of the way that we're parenting? And what is motivating us to parent that way? And it's like, woo, maybe we need to, if our kids are showing attitudes of entitlement, the question then becomes, are there things we're doing, again, unintentionally in our parenting that might be contributing to that? And what might be some things we can do to help change that?
And I think that's one of the hallmarks of our work, is that we do kind of ask parents to have a higher level of self-awareness. It's not all about what do we want to manipulate our kids to do. It's not about what are their desired behaviors, but it's also a huge healthy dose of what am I doing to contribute to this negative thing that I'm seeing, and am I willing to do the hard personal work to relinquish that? So for example, if my identity is caught up in being a mother, and the way that I feel needed and the way I feel validated is if I'm constantly either helping my children or making them happy, that's going to cause consequences in them. Now I can manipulate their behavior and say, oh, my kid's entitled, or oh, my kid doesn't respect me or doesn't appreciate me. Or we can turn it on ourselves and say, ooh, where's my identity? What am I doing here? And that, again, it requires a healthy dose of humility and willing to change us, not just trying to change them.
That is so powerful. I think, instead of criticizing our kids, whether to them or just in our minds, to think, okay, where might I be contributing to this? How can I change how I'm actually parenting my kid to help them? So it's like inside out parenting, right?
And it's not even just about parenting. It speaks to the core of our identity. Where am I finding my identity? Do I know who I am? Do I like myself? Am I okay with me? And then when we're okay with ourselves, then we can be a better parent to our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Can I share an example of the mother that didn't do this well? It's a true story from Seattle. A dear friend of mine was a senior executive at one of the major technology companies. They were interviewing for a key sales position, narrowed it down to 3 finalist candidates. They deliberately waited until the last interview for their favorite candidate, who winds up showing up for the interview with his mother. This is a 24-year-old guy. And mom shows up. My guess is he didn't ask mom to show up. My guess is mom, well, and that's what was said. Mom wanted to show that her kid was the best one for the job. And of course, she cost him the job. The interview ended, and my friend told her to just like, don't do this again, because other companies are going to react the same way. And so it's like, wow.
Oh yeah, we have to become self-aware that she was not aware what she was doing, and that can happen. It maybe won't look like that, but that's what we can end up doing. And the son must have thought on some level, I need to bring my mom, and just
because he's not been empowered. He had not been empowered to believe in himself that he could do it on his own.
Yep.
Yes. Well, just before we are done with the call, I want to make sure that you just give our listeners some just tidbits of what are some proactive things that we can do. And I will add that everybody listening has to get this book, and you at the back even have some real, a checklist, which is very helpful too, to ask ourselves. And I really love that too. But what are just a few of like the top 3 or 4 things that you do? You need to do this.
Right. Okay. I think the first thing we need to do, and maybe this is a little philosophical, is we need to release the control that we feel of being responsible for our children's success and happiness. Right. So when we release that eagle to soar, we are not only helping our kids, but we're helping ourselves, because no parent should feel responsible for their kids' happiness and success and things like that. We're there to set the stage, to do all the coaching and training, but that's a burden none of us should share. So that would be one of my points.
And mine would be cultivate self-awareness in yourself and also in them. Help them learn to appreciate who they are uniquely, call out those things that you see them succeeding in, set them up to succeed, but then be willing to let them fail and affirm the positive and help them cope with the negative. Don't try to eradicate the negative so they never have to experience it.
Right. A third thing I would just share is when it comes to the tangible preparation of our kids, focus on those life skills that they're going to need to know and be able to do themselves well without reminding. So whether it's budgeting, whether it's time management, whether it's career readiness, all of those things, those life skills are going to be super important. We can't count on our high schools to be teaching those to our kids. And then finally, the core leadership skills that these kids are needing, dependability we talked about that, and integrity, and having great interpersonal skills and being a good friend picker. Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about the importance of relationships in our work, because that's really what life is about. And we want our great relationship with our kids, but we want them to be making great decisions about who they choose to spend their time with. And helping our kids be great friend pickers is one of the hallmarks of the work that we do.
Thank you. Those are so helpful to think about how we can be helping them so that we can prepare them and let go and not hold on to that kite.
It's about freedom, not control. Really, if you distill it down to the essence, it's how do I set them up for freedom?
And you talk about focusing more on character, developing their character versus focusing on the performance,
exactly,
and trying to control.
One of the interesting things about that is how many times I've been seeing comments from the business community when it comes to recruiting is, we hire for attitude, we train for skill. Most young people think success is all about whether, how rich your family is or what your GPA is or whatever, but to an employer, they will tell you it's attitude and leadership qualities and character that are going to be the greatest determinants of who they hire and who survives in reaching their full career potential. So
Wow.
those soft skills are critical to build. And then when the kids demonstrate it, we call it out and we affirm it.
And to reframe mistakes. We have to reframe mistakes, as that's actually going to build resiliency. They're going to learn and grow so much from making mistakes.
That's right. We
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
We all did.
Lots of them. And still do, so that's how we grow. That's how we learn, and that's how we grow. Well, thank you so much for being on here and sharing your wisdom. And I'm going to share the links to your book, but tell them where to find you.
You bet. Well, and please encourage all of you that, just like Cheryl, we want to be available to you to, to help answer questions and so forth. So DennisTratine.com is a great go-to place. It has all the information about our books, about our blog, how to sign up for our newsletters, things like it is a wealth of information, and all the contact information is there as well. So if you want to send us an email with your situation, your questions, or where to find this or that, I'm struggling with this, we are here in the Pacific Northwest to support you wherever you are. And that's what our desire is. So
thank you so much.
Doing. It's huge to have a community like this, to talk about these things, to have the support. I say all the time, parenting is a team sport. So I just want to call you out and affirm you and thank you for what you're doing for all the families that are benefiting from this group, because it's so important.
Oh, thank you. And thank you to all that you're doing and helping parents and helping teens and empowering them, and all the leadership work you're doing. So I'm very grateful to know both of you and to have you on here with me, and I'll share all the links to your books too.
Excellent.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, well, have a great day, and
thank you, you too.
Thank you for being with us.
Okay,
We'll
thanks,
talk soon.
everybody.
Okay, all right, bye.